I like the pickup of Billy Edwards Jr., but what do the numbers say? Do the numbers say the Badgers did well there with their quarterback going into 2025?
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this community. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here. It's not too late to get in on the regular season action over at FanDuel because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's bring Guardier Fickle on. Hasn't been on in a bit. The Badgers numbers analytical guru. I saw some of your takes on Billy Edwards on Twitter. I wanted to get or an X, I guess. I wanted to get your take on Billy Edwards Jr. in general.
Yeah, no. So I like the pickup. I think he adds a lot of what Tyler Van Dyke we all assume would have given us, right? You know, a little bit of a veteran presence, been around the block at a Power 5 program, Power 4 program, and just has been through it, right? And I think, you know, you look at Mordecai and Van Dyke, that's kind of the template there that Luke Fickle has kind of brought in, a guy who's got experience. So from that perspective, just on the surface, I really liked going after a guy who had that type of experience. And then my initial takes were a lot of just kind of the eye test of actually watching, you know, some of the games that he's put on film. And I think the arm talent is there. There's a lot of zip on his ball, at least in the intermediate and short routes. The deep balls, you know, there's a little bit of inconsistency there. So on the surface, kind of that's where I was tweeting, but I've gone deeper and deeper into the data so far. And, you know, sack to pressure ratio looks pretty decent. You know, passing composite, which is so I use SIS for kind of some of the more tracking data. So his on target rate times is intended air yards per attempt is kind of middle of the road for kind of the top 200 quarterbacks over the last kind of 4 years. So, you know, nothing that's going to jump off the page at you in terms of, I'm not sure how many games he's going to win us against an Ohio State or a Penn State or an Oregon type of player, but I think we're going to get somebody who's been around the block, has experience, isn't going to get rattled in games like that because he's been in those environments. And I think he's got the talent with, you know, a good scheme and Jeff Grimes and, you know, better positional players from offensive line and just the running backs that we have, the wide receiving group that we have to be a capable kind of game manager type who can, you know, potentially get us into that 7 wins and get us kind of back on the right track from where we have been the past couple of years.
Man, it's wild that we're talking about getting back to 7 wins. It's still interesting to me. You know, one of the points I've made, and I think you kind of hit on it, some of those numbers, you're kind of middle of the pack. Middle of the pack would be a big improvement over what the Badgers have had the last couple of years.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, like not going to, you know, slam the door on anybody on their way out, but, you know, Braden Locke just flat out hasn't given us the type of production that we need in this new era Big Ten. And yeah, it's hasn't been great. So getting to average is a step up for sure.
Let me ask you this. I think a lot of the initial pushback on Billy Edwards Jr., because there were Badger fans that pushed back pretty hard on it, was, for lack of a better term, and this isn't meant to be derogatory in any stretch, but box score scouting, right? You look at Maryland's record and you look at kind of his numbers in Big Ten, and not great in either sense. What would your response to that be? And I'm not asking you to defend or agree with it. Just what is kind of the response to that narrative, if there is one?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody can cherry pick certain statistics and how they measure it, right? Like I'd say, you know, if you look at his, you know, some people have been talking about his interceptions and things like that. If you strip out down 2 scores in the fourth quarter, that's about half of his interceptions last year. So obviously there is a nature of, on a bad team, bad offensive line, down late in the game is trying to push the ball downfield, trying to do some things maybe that he otherwise wouldn't have in some of these situations that he found himself in on a bad team last year that maybe can cloud some of the data that you're looking at. So I think it's fair to criticize, what somebody puts on paper, but also know that when you do those types of things, you open yourself up to other people cherry picking certain sort of statistics like that as well. So I think, right to your point, you can look at it both ways, right? You can say, hey, he didn't perform in the Big Ten. He's not. That's going to translate exactly to Wisconsin. Or you can say, hey, he's a byproduct of a bad system. You need to really kind of take those out of the equation when you're evaluating.
I have a bit of a theory too, and I've been working on this recently. And let me know if you think I'm off base or if there might be something to this. I think Badger fans are a little snake bitten by the fact that Tanner Mordecai didn't really work out and Tyler Van Dyke got hurt. I think if Tyler Van Dyke was just healthy all last year, I think he would have been middle of the pack, Big Ten. He would have been okay. And then Badger fans wouldn't be so, I don't know if gun shy is the right word, but so gun shy about another one-year portal quarterback coming in.
I think that's a great take. And, I actually felt that. And so, as we brought in Billy Edwards Jr., I went back and watched the Western Michigan game, the South Dakota game, and the first drive of the Alabama game. And you kind of, obviously, with Phil Longo, right, it wasn't the fit that the program needed. And obviously things weren't clicking on all cylinders. But I think you can see a lot of poise in his game, things that, as you look to the back half of the season, would have been a godsend for the team, is just some poise, some leadership, some ability to kind of make some things happen when they're not, right there in front of you. I mean, I think the one thing that you can say about Braden Locke is that when things were there, he was able to execute. But when things weren't there, things got bad in a real hurry. And I think, a guy like Tyler Van Dyke, and something Mordecai had as well. I mean, you look at when both of those two players were playing 4 quarters of the game, we were 8-3. Now we can talk about competition and those things as well, but just kind of that presence of not getting rattled. And when things aren't there, the really destructive plays that Braden Locke was, more apt to make than a Tyler Van Dyke or a Billy Edwards Jr. or Mordecai, somebody with more experience, wouldn't have made, would have been a big help.
That's a great number. I actually hadn't seen that, the 8-3 mark, when either of those quarterbacks played 4 quarters. It speaks to, again, what we talked about, just being solid. If you can get to okay at quarterback, you can win a lot of those coin toss games that you're losing if you're not okay at quarterback. Let me ask you this. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. No, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the competition level definitely skews that a bit, but I mean, I think it speaks to a larger point.
Let me ask you this. Pauling gone. CJ Williams gone. Obviously, I think we'd both agree Pauling is the bigger impact there. Badgers bringing in Ballard. They bring in Hamper. Kogio coming in for sure is a big deal. Is the skill group here around Billy Edwards better than the skill group that Braden Locke had last year?
Oof. I mean, if we're talking just last year, the amount of production that Will Pauling had this past season wasn't at the level that we saw in 2023. But I don't think you can really kind of corner it in that way. I would say that's a tough question because, Tretch Kahuna is still kind of an unproven commodity. I mean, we've seen it in the bowl game. We've seen when it's at its peak, in the Purdue game. But I'd probably have to say that Locke had better options this year than what and Billy Edwards Jr. is going to have next year, just based on a lot of it's unproven at this level. I mean, Ballard hasn't really had more than, double-digit catches in the season. Hamper is at a lower level, and Tretch is still unproven. So
I would agree with you. I think this is an easy one. If I gave you the option to push, I would probably personally push because I think Kogio coming in gives you a lot. But I do think the impact of Pauling, because he had some notable drops last year, people are a little quick to say, nah, it's fine. That was the best route runner on the team. Super tough, incredibly quick. I don't think that's an easy replace just because he had a few more drops last year than he had in 2023.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It will be interesting. You did mention Koziel. I kind of omitted him, but that's going to be huge. And also, how do these new pieces fit into Grimes' system versus Longo, right? I'm not sure how much Ballard or Hamper would add to a Longo system just based on, their tools and kind of, I mean, that's kind of what CJ Williams and Bryson Green have been, are kind of the archetype of those two types of players. So not sure how much that would have added, but into a Grimes system, there's probably a lot of potential there.
Yeah, that's a great point too. We're going to take a quick break, come back with Guard Your Fickle. I want to ask him, who's the portal player coming in that Badger fans aren't talking about enough? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is awesome, incredible, fast, simple, easy, trustworthy, futures parlay, spreads, teasers. Like, it's got it all. What, you don't need to go anywhere else. FanDuel is like the Walmart of sports books. You got everything there. You can go, you can hang out, get your eyes checked, get some taxes done, oil change, pick up a box of cards, Doritos, food, whatever. It's all there. FanDuel's got you covered. Right now, it's a great time. Football playoffs coming up. College football playoffs are going on. The NFL playoffs, are coming up. College football playoffs are going on. College basketball is going on. It is an excellent time. And right now, new customers with a new bet, $5 bet. If you win it, get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed. If you win your first $5 bet, that's absolutely incredible over at FanDuel.com. Always do it responsibly. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the NFL and the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's jump back in with Guard Your Fickle. As always, man, I want to make sure we give people the opportunity for you to find the work you're doing and give yourself an opportunity to talk about what you got going on.
Yeah, right now a lot of my stuff's just on X, so at Guard Your Fickle there. Follow me on Twitter. Always tweeting on game days, Badger Sports, any big news, kind of the analytical flavor of the perspective there. So give me a follow, and yeah, that's pretty much what I got going on right now.
Talk to me about this portal class. Big picture, who's the one player that maybe Badger fans aren't talking about enough?
Yeah, that's also a tough one, but I like the Parker Peterson out of Tulane. I think obviously defensive line was a big gap going into the season, and then obviously with the loss of James Thompson Jr., tough to really evaluate how well that group would have progressed. But then obviously, just didn't perform, and then you lose Thompson Jr. and Kurt Neal to the portal. There's some big holes to fill there. So I like kind of the position that he's going to give for the Badgers, and the versatility I think that may add for them to go 3 down linemen more often. So I think from what I've watched, pretty stout at the point of attack, and I think just adds kind of a piece that we haven't really had since Luke Fickle and Mike Tressel have been brought on board. Someone who's just really stout at the point of attack. How much him, and then maybe kind of a punt here, but Brandon Lane as well. We didn't really get to see too much of him, but I think those two together, I think they add that position we haven't really had so far in the Fickle Tressel era. So I'm really excited and what that can add.
Yeah, I like Peterson too. Again, it almost goes back to the quarterback conversation we had. Can you go from below average or maybe not very good to solid? Can he give you solid defensive end 3 tech play? I think he can. And if you get there, that Iowa game looks different, right? If they can't just push you around all game.
I'd really like to see Christian Allegrio play free without, his defensive tackle getting pushed into his chest. Just to watch him fly. I think it's like it's multiplication by addition, because you're giving a player like Allegrio the ability to use his physical tools in all of its glory versus, having to kind of play on his back feet because he doesn't know, is the hole going to be there, or is it going to be gaping because, somebody got blown off the line? So I think it lets him play more free, and the linebackers like Curtis and all the rest.
Let me ask you this. I think for years, the Badgers were greater than the sum of the parts to some degree. When you look at recruiting rankings, football and basketball, I think last year we thought they maybe fixed the linebacker spot, and it turned out the parts were almost greater than the sum. They never quite figured out how to use all these new pieces. That's kind of my worry with defensive line. You bring in 5 guys plus, 5 guys to some degree. There's different positions. There's versatility, but you're also bringing in multiple defensive line recruits. You have Brendan Lane coming back. Obviously, Dylan Johnson's going to play. Do you have any of the same concerns on the defensive line that we kind of saw with linebacker last year, where it felt like it took the coaching staff too long to figure out where to put these guys?
Yeah, I think that's a huge risk. I do wonder that they have a little bit of guys that they can go to early and plug and play these kind of newcomers in more as depth pieces. And similar to Elijah Hills, when they hit, ride it. I think they were a little late to the game on kind of playing him more snaps. But yeah, I do think that's a pretty big risk. Just bringing in so many new bodies into a room, understanding where everybody fits is going to be a challenge.
Let's talk cornerback for a second as we stay on the portal. Badgers got in Lattimore. They got one guy. We're still kind of waiting on Ricardo Holman. We know Xavier Lucas, whenever that ends, we know he's not playing next year for the Badgers. That position kind of terrifies me. And I don't know, like, whether how many freshmen are going to have to play. I think you need 2 more portal guys. Walk me off a ledge here. I want. What's the optimistic look on cornerback if you have one, or am I just?
I think I may bump us both off the ledge.
Yeah,
it's bad, and for the, I guess, how dire I view the situation, it's very surprising to me that we haven't seen as much more movement or talk of portal targets, guys on campus, those types of things. And maybe that's an indication of what they feel like they have in the room right now. And is that an indication for these guys who did bounce? Arnold, I forget the other one from South Florida. Yeah. I wonder if maybe that's an indication that Harper and Agard were really performing well, and with an off season of weight training, we're going to be ready to take their snaps. I don't know, but there's a lot to be concerned about. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to talk you off that ledge, Ryan.
Well, thank you for the effort. I do like. Here's the thing. I like Harper.
That's the glass half full take, is that Agard and Harper are going to be ready.
I like those 2 guys. It's just tough when you start looking at it because neither of them played last year. I mean, did Agard get in for reps? I can't remember. I don't think so. Regardless, like, you're counting on 2 guys that are very green. You're going to be counting on portal guys, and we've all seen the hit rate on portal guys. And that's if Rico comes back. If Rico doesn't come back, I think you're going to get destroyed in the passing game, quite frankly. And I hate saying that. I don't know what the answer would be if Rico doesn't come back.
We don't have one.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You got any eligibility left?
That'll make the situation worse.
Let me switch over to the positive side here. I actually really like, because I didn't get a chance to talk to you about Kojiel. I think that is maybe the highest floor pickup the Badgers have gotten in the portal, maybe ever. I mean, I'm sure there's someone else I could think of, but that feels like a home run addition for a spot that hasn't had any production, for a new quarterback, for a guy that caught 94 passes last year. That's a home run.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the frame, he's got the athleticism, great at the attacking the ball in space, in traffic. I mean, from a receiving standpoint, I mean, he's everything we haven't had at that position since Jake Ferguson's left us. Now, I do have some concerns about leverage, blocking. I think there's some things there that are going to need to be cleaned up to play in the Big Ten. But I mean, outside of that, from a receiving standpoint, and honestly, I think that's what we need. I mean, I've got a lot of faith in Ashcraft, Seagreaves, some guys that we have to kind of cover up the blocking end of things. Grant Steck, he's probably going to take a big step and kind of be more of that physical threat. But yeah, from a receiving standpoint, over the middle, losing Will Pauling, leaning back on a guy like Koziol is going to be massive for presence over the middle.
Could he lead the team in receptions next year?
I haven't dug too much into Grimes and where he's targeting from a positional standpoint to say for certainty. But I mean, his track record speaks for itself, and being 6'6", 6'7" with great hands, that's a pretty nice safety blanket if I'm Billy Edwards Jr. So I think that's not a bad bet.
Yeah, absolutely. The wild thing with him, man, is he got 94 passes and he was second team All-MAC because another guy caught 100. That is absolutely insane. All right, we're going to take one quick break here. Come back. I want to talk basketball a little bit. Gardner Fickle, is Winter coming, or is this latest 3-game stretch from Nolan Winter a bit of a mirage? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Rocket Money. I talk about Rocket Money all the time because, listen, I'm here for you. I am here for you. I am here to help you save money. Let's do that together. Let's make that connection in 2025. Let's get rid of some unwanted subscriptions over at Rocket Money. Whatever you got, that's just every month piling a little bit out, are taking a little bit out of your piggy bank, your bank account. That stuff adds up. It aggregates. And eventually you have 12 months of that, and you look back and you're like, that was a mortgage payment. That was a down payment on something. That was or a part of a vacation that we could have had if I didn't have this monthly $39 going here and this monthly $40 going here and this monthly $10 going here. That stuff adds up. Get rid of that. Over at Rocket Money, let's do it together. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. Rocketmoney.com/locked on. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code locked on calls for $20 off. Personal finance app that will help you cancel your unwanted subscription and save members up to $740 a year. Rocketmoney.com/locked on. Let's get back to guard your Fickle. And again, man, let's switch gears to basketball. Football, we talk a lot about football. Let's switch gears to basketball, the sport that's still going on. Nolan Winter, last 3 games has been great. Offensively, also on the glass. Defensively, I think he's been pretty good too. Is that a mirage or is Winter coming?
I think Winter's coming. I think he's been scratching the surface for the first 40 games of his Badgers career. I mean, and I think he's finally broken through. And the reason I say that is because he's actually upped his usage and still been able to maintain his efficiency over these past 3 games. And he's always flashed the ability to knock down the open 3, put the ball on the deck. His freshman year, he was always scared to take that next dribble, take the contact, and really try to go and finish. He's not been shy these past 3 games. I think he's starting to put it all together. And if you listen to Greg Gard's press conferences, he's always talked about how much they're trying to convince Winter how good he can be. To me, that signals their belief that it's just a confidence issue, right? They can see it in practice what he does and his capabilities. It's just about putting that consistently, on film, on tape, for the real deal. So I think it's coming. I mean, you look at all of his physical tools, what he possesses from footwork, mentality, toughness. I mean, all of those things that he shows on a consistent basis. Winter's coming.
I absolutely love it. And I think he's been better defensively. I was worried defensively that you'd be a little too big and a little too slow with Crowell and Winter playing at the 5 and 4. Still to be determined to some degree, like there's some tough matchups coming up, but I think he's held up defensively. I love the effort on the glass. I agree with you. I think he's coming. Let me ask you on the flip side of this. Winter, we agree, is probably coming. Is Klesmit going to shoot the ball this year well? And what about Blackwell? What do you make of their shooting slumps? Both shooting well under what they shot last year. For Klesmit, shooting well under what he's shot every single year of his college career.
Yeah, I'll take Blackwell first because I think that one's more of a mechanical issue. His shot is just way too flat, and it doesn't really have great rotation. If you see his kind of misses when they hit the rim, they're kind of bouncing all over the place and kind of looping out. That's a byproduct of flat and poor rotation. So I think if he just kind of fixes those types of issues, he'll be just fine. I don't really see anything bigger than that. And he's not in a score first mindset as he was last year, where he was kind of playing extremely off ball, swing kind of shot attempts. He's not necessarily getting those looks as cleanly this year. So I think it's just a lot to process, and some mechanical things are breaking down for him. But you look at everything else that he's doing, his assist rate's up. He's still getting to the free throw line. I mean, there's nothing else about his game that looks off besides his shooting. To me, that always signals mechanical issue. That's fixable. Klesmit.
Well, let's pause there on Blackwell because I think you made a great point there that I want to hit on. Last year, a lot of people feel like I'm kind of internally glad AJ Store's gone. I didn't love the game. I didn't love the defense. But the one thing Store did, and I think you hit on it beautifully, is it helped set up stuff like pass to Blackwell in the corner because teams loaded up against Store. Mm-hmm. They had to. And this year, you don't have that guy, and more defensive pressure is on Blackwell. So he's not getting his clean looks. I thought that was a great point you made.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, Tanjay doesn't add the same level of, gravity that AJ Store provided.
All right, let's look for now. Yeah.
But for Klesmit, to me, he's on and he's off, right? So to me, it's like, you look at the Marquette game, he was, very, very on. But you're seeing air balls and things where it's not even really close. And then that it's seeping into other parts of his games where he's usually, very locked in from a toughness effort standpoint. And you've kind of seen those things not to the level that I would expect from him. And just kind of those mental errors. So to me, it just seems like something's off with him from a mentality standpoint. I'm not sure if it's, how he fits in with Tanjay Blackwell, kind of taking a lot of the usage, a lot of the ball handling, just how that fits into his game more. And he's just trying to really find himself. But we're going to need Max Klesmit to figure out that, because there's been a lot of open shot opportunities for him that he's got to hit more consistently if we're going to compete for a Big Ten title.
You think there's a scenario where, and Klesmit brings a lot of intangibles too with experience, and to your point, up to this, even this year's, he gives you a little more toughness. Usually, his assist rate is up a little bit as well. But do you think there's a scenario where, with as well as Kamari McGee has played, and if as poorly as Klesmit has shot and maybe continues to shoot, you see, I'm not suggesting starting Kamari because I don't really even care who starts, but more minutes shifted over to Kamari, Blackwell, Tanjay lineup by, say, Klesmit, Tanjay, Blackwell lineup?
No, absolutely. I do also think that the offense just runs better with McGee in there, because now you've got, and with Blackwell and Tanjay, because both of those two are 3-level scorers, where Klesmit is definitely not a 3-level scorer yet. And so I think it just adds a lot more dynamics to the offense that the opposing team has to defend, that I just don't think you're getting out there with anybody else.
Last question here, and then I'll let you go. I know we got Rose Bowl coming up, which we're both excited to watch. Going into the new year, kicking off kind of the real Big Ten slate. I know the Badgers have already played too, but coming into Iowa, where are you at on this Badgers team? Like, what are we going to? Is this going to be a tournament team? Just big picture to wrap it up. Where are you at right now with this Badgers team?
Yeah, I think they're a tournament team. I think they're a high single-digit seed right now. There's just a lot of things that do really concern me about this group from a, honestly, I think it's a toughness thing. And when I'm saying toughness, I'm saying in like the Jay Billis sense of doing those kind of things that are winning plays. Not everybody's doing those things consistently. Like you'll see Blackwell make a spurt of like winning plays, getting some offensive rebounds, making some hustle plays, and everybody is doing them, but everybody's not doing them consistently enough to win games. And like, Greg Gard talks a lot about, right, defense doesn't really matter that much anymore. I would tend to disagree with him pretty strongly on that. You do need to score points, and defense has been made a lot harder, but kind of the toughness to do the things right all of the time is how you can go from a mediocre defense, which is what we are right now, to an above average. When you look at the national title runner-up team, they were the best offense in the history of KenPom. Now Auburn's making a run at that, but their defense was, nothing crazy. It was, top 40, but it wasn't special. So you do need some level of making the right plays on the defensive end that I just don't know if we necessarily have that right now.
Yeah.
So that concerns me. But offensively, the system, the skill set, it's all there offensively. So no worries about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's some defensive toughness and versatility lacking. And I think that's a lot of what Tyler Wall brought you. Now, Wall couldn't do the other things on the other side of the court that we need, but you don't have a guy who is kind of like a Tyler Wall defensively at that forward spot, or in the 4 and the 5, or a Bruzewitz, or you can go back to the Badger Rolodex, and the Badgers usually have a guy like that, and there's not a guy like that on this team, at least in the front court and on the wings.
Yeah, no, I don't see it. I think, guilt, but I kind of go back to it. It's like there's spurts. Everybody gives you spurts of those type of plays, but you don't have a guy who's always doing it. It could just be even one guy, kind of the glue guy, so to speak, somebody who's just always, boxing out, getting the first touch on the ball, all of those different sorts of things. We just don't necessarily have a guy who's doing that consistently enough for us.
Yeah, great stuff as always. Guard Your Fickle. Go check him out at X, at Guard Your Fickle. As always, man, I really appreciate your time on Wisconsin. A bunch more content coming up this week, y'all. We'll talk to you later.